And I want to say something about things that we know apart from the use of the senses. Things that we know apart from using our five senses. It's important for you to have examples of things that we know that we don't know by seeing, touching, tasting, smelling, or hearing them. So let me just list some examples. First of all, self-knowledge. We know our own thoughts and feelings. We know our own sensations, but we don't know our own thoughts and feelings by seeing them, touching them, tasting them, smelling them, or hearing them. You follow me on that? I know which eye in the room is my eye, if I can put it to you that way. I know which ego. When I use the first person pronoun I in the standard sense, I know which it refers to, and I know who's using it to refer, more fundamentally, without having to see, touch, taste, smell, or anything. I also think our knowledge of our own body is that way, as I suggested a while ago. I don't think that our knowledge of which body is mine is based upon sensations, because it would be impossible for me to know which body was mine if I had to do that on the basis of a sensation, because I wouldn't be able to identify the relevant body to judge as mine if I didn't already start by knowing which body was mine. That probably wasn't real helpful. Our knowledge of other minds, my knowledge that you're conscious, is not something that is at least totally based on... There's a key element of my knowledge that there are other conscious beings that goes beyond what I can simply see and touch and taste and smell and hear. My knowledge of mathematics and logic can't be based upon what we can see. Think about this. We know that 2 and 2 is 4. But we don't just know 2 and 2 is 4, as I said earlier. We know it's necessarily 4. You understand that? It's not even possible that 2 and 2 be 5 or not be 4. So it's not only that we know 2 and 2 is 4, but we know what is called the modality or the degree of strength or the impossibility of the proposition. And this is not something we know on the basis of a sense experience. I don't justify my knowledge that 2 and 2 is 4 by appealing to something I can see, touch, taste, smell, or hear as the basis for mathematical knowledge. I can't go into that now, but let me just tell you that at SC, one of my professors, Hartree Field, denied that 2 and 2 was 4. And quite in his writings and in class, because he did not want to have to believe in things that were not physical, namely numbers, and things that we could know that weren't numbers. You follow me? If 2 and 2 is 4, probably that statement is about what are called invisible mathematical objects that you can't see, touch, taste, smell, or hear. I have a bumper sticker on a thing that says I break for abstract objects or universals, and it's sort of a funny deal. Okay, it's supposed to be funny. I was in a filling station, and I literally was getting gas out only in Southern California, and I break for universals, and the guy pulls up to get gas next to me and says, "Hey, I break for universals, what's that?" And I said, "Well, it's a long story." And he said, "Well, what is it? I'd like to know." And so I said, "Well, you can't see, universals are things that are kind of outside space, and you can't see, so you couldn't break for them." And so the claim you could break for them is supposed to be kind of a joke. And he said, I thought it was some sort of a homosexual deal or something, some kind of a sexual thing here. And I thought, golly, no way, I'm universalism. Gee whiz, my bumper, get that thing off my car. I mean, what is this? It's a philosopher's joke that went badly sour. There are examples of, I believe, religious experience that we can know that aren't based on sense experience and so on. Now, these are just examples of things that we know without the knowledge being coming primarily by appeal to sense experiences to know them. So the claim that we can only know what we can see, touch, taste, smell, or hear, I'd argue that moral knowledge also does not involve, in an essential way, sense experience. So those who claim you can only know things by seeing, touching, tasting, smelling, or hearing them are going to have trouble with all these kinds of knowledge that I just appealed to. These are examples of knowledge that go beyond what we can know. Now, let me say something very important. I heard Bill talk a little bit about the moral argument here. About meaning in life. And I think he was, if I didn't misunderstand it, I think he was trying to claim something like, as a matter of fact, the existential dilemma we face is that if there is no God, then there's no purpose or value or meaning to what we do and to us. And the only possibility for there being purpose and meaning and that sort of thing is that there be a God. And I think that's correct. I'm very much in favor of that argument. Suppose though an unbeliever claimed to know that mercy was a virtue, or suppose an unbeliever claimed to know that it was wrong to torture innocent babies for fun. Now, you see, I think that that person would be right, not only that that's true, but would be right, at least initially, to claim to know that. But now suppose the person were an atheist, right? Now what's happened is that the atheism raises a defeater. A defeater is something that counts against a claim. Now the atheist has got a defeater for what he claims to know that now counts against the claim. Illustration. I claim to be able to see that there is some water on the road, and I'm going to have to put my brakes down, push them down here pretty soon because the road's wet. Somebody says to me, well, you recognize now, don't you, that you're driving in the desert, that it's 105 degrees outside, it hasn't rained around here for 5 months. Okay? Now what I've got is a defeater. Okay? And what I took myself to know, and without a good skeptical argument against me, notice now the skeptic's given me an argument against my view. But without a skeptical argument, I may have been within my rights to have claimed to know that there's water on the road. But now I've got grounds for thinking that that's a mirage. I've got a defeater to my view. Do you follow me on that? Now suppose the skeptic starts off by saying it's wrong to torture babies for fun. Fair enough. But now we've got a problem to raise against him. And that problem is very much like pointing out to him, well, look, you're in the desert. It hasn't rained for 6 months. In other words, we can cite conditions that make the claim that this is a moral truth extremely hard to justify. Very much like we can cite conditions when a person says there's water on the road, it's hot, it's a desert, blah, 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 that make that claim now hard to sustain and justify. So what happens is that atheism now becomes a tremendous defeater against the claim that we can't have moral knowledge and that there are moral truths. And now the atheist becomes unjustified, given his atheism, in continuing to assert that there are moral propositions. So something has got to go. Either the atheism, which is defeating his claim to know, or he's got to admit that he doesn't have moral knowledge after all, and that things are, as far as he can tell, relative. You see that? Now, let me say something a little differently about evolution. I actually think that evolutionary naturalism, and this is an argument that was developed by C.S. Lewis in the book called Miracles, and it's been developed recently by Alvin Plantinga in a slightly different way in his book Warrant and Proper Function. And I won't develop it in the detail he does, but basically the idea goes like this. If there's no God, and evolution is how we got here. Now, stay with me for 15 minutes. I know you're tired, and this is sort of like taking a drink out of a fire hydrant. I understand that. Believe me, I get sick of hearing myself talk every bit as much as you do. But stay with me for 15 minutes. How would you like to be in my shoe? I've got to go home with myself. So I got to stay with myself. That's for a long time. And so anyway, so what you only have to do for 15 minutes. Okay, so stay with me. You know that evolution is a story about how living things developed, right? But not only is it a story about how frogs came about and how dogs came about, it's a story about how all their parts came about, isn't it? It's a story about how the frog leg came to be the way it is, right? It's a story about how the turtle's shell came to be the way it is. And it's a story about how all organisms